Terrorism remains a big problem around the world and the extremism that fuels it remains largely unaddressed. Terror activities of the last 2 decades have exposed the role of madrassas or religious schools in sustaining jihadi network. A booming madrasa education system in Muslim-majority countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan is worrisome to the stability of the region. There is an acute obligation to monitor the activities of these religious seminaries, particularly in Afghanistan, where the radical products of such controversial education institutions are now in power. We take a look.
A large number of people in Pakistan and Afghanistan who are living in villages and small towns face extreme poverty, feudalism, illiteracy, and lack of awareness. They have two choices, either to abandon the education of their children or to induct them in religious schools. Most of these religious schools or madrassas provide free education, boarding and lodging services to the children, and that is one of the reasons that they are hijacked by religious extremist zealots. The curriculum which is taught in these madrasas highlights the concept of jihad or holy war, and it reflects Islam as a religion of war. These religious schools are being seen as promoters of contemporary terror in countries like Pakistan and Afghanistan, where they are integral components of the education system. Recently, at the 40th session of UN Human Rights, a research analyst at the European Foundation for South Asian Studies expressed concern over these religious schools becoming breeding ground for terrorists.
It is well known that the menace of terrorism in South Asia has largely grown out of religious schools, the so-called madrassas. These schools that oftentimes instill a distorted, ultra-conservative interpretation of Islam still flourish uninhibitedly in Pakistan and Afghanistan. The Taliban and the dreaded Haqqani network were born from such madrassas in Pakistan. Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and other terrorist organizations continue operating such terror factories in Pakistan under the protection of the country's powerful intelligence agency. The international community must not be appeased with the Taliban's false promises of education. What is schooling worth if instead of raising a workforce capable of leading their country onto a path towards peace and development, creates foot soldiers indoctrinated into a worldview defined by misogyny and hatred?
In Afghanistan, Taliban's return to power has raised fears among Afghans that they will forcibly recruit youngsters to groom them for terror activities. Under the Taliban's previous regime, thousands of Afghans under the age of 18 were enrolled in terror groups. These children were first brainwashed, then given training on the handling of weapons, and finally sent to war. Certain children, barely 6 years of age, were even used as child suicide bombers. The entire process of such radicalization begins in the orthodox religious training centers like madrassas. For the Taliban, these religious schools are the best training institution among all the educational centers in Afghanistan. The radical Islamic group is questioning the relevance of modern education and claiming that mullahs are the greatest of all without having higher education degrees. While millions of girls are still confined to homes in Afghanistan, boys are going to schools which will now have new terror-promoting syllabus. Hence, there is an urgent need to pressurize the Taliban government on the core issue of education in the country.
The lack of economic independence of the Taliban and their patron state next door has a silver lining. It gives leverage to the international community. Leverage that must be used to prevent the loss of another generation of young Afghans to madrassa-led radicalism. Placing conditions on diplomatic and economic engagement to ensure human rights-conform education, without which the right to development can hardly be realized, is the most meaningful investment we can make in Afghanistan's future.
The Taliban has never bothered to respect the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, which seeks to protect children from any kind of jihadi recruitment. With openly favoring madrasa education, the insurgent group has already generated fear that it may once again conscript children forcibly. The international community shall use all tools at its disposal to counter the global terrorist threat in Afghanistan, and crack down on the hidden activities of madrassas is one of them.